Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, coming to us from the Storied Illumination, good brother Monarch.
I am convinced Frankie from One Piece is a Suda51 character that ended up in the product not made by Suda51. That is how I now choose to describe him.
Yeah, but he's not nearly as violent as the Suda51 character.
Well, he's not as violent, but he's kind of got the vibe. I determined this after his fight with Senor Pink. This feels like something that would be in a Suda51 game.
Maybe earlier Suda51, like
yeah,
pre No More Heroes. I might be able to make that argument.
We're just going to ignore I'm pretty sure Frankie existed before Suda51. That's not relevant to this point.
That's a chicken and egg situation there. But obviously this is a 1 week one shot, given our 3-in-1 rule that we have here in the temple. And this time around the wheel landed on Spencer Campbell's Slayers RPG. Something I've had a lengthy relationship with in one form or another, and Gila RPGs, the Spencer Campbell's company, is a interesting beast. And as far as this particular game, this is admittedly a improved version of it, as opposed to the one that I have in print, which is the 1.0 version. This is more like 1.1. there's not too much in the way of major changes. And while this, and one might say, wait, you guys are doing a core book as a one shot. This is technically 100 pages, but that page count is a bit deceptive.
Many of these pages,
not in a bigger on the inside kind of way, I should note.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of like 2-paragraph pages. Like normal paragraph length.
And there's a good chunk of it that's dedicated to the city, quote unquote. And since that is on the fluff end of things, that's not something that we're going to be covering. But it opens up with, actually before I even open up, I do want to read off some of the inspirations. Blades in the Dark, Bloodborne, Castlevania, Destiny, Dishonored, Tombstone, and the Liminanas. The last one, I feel like I should know that. Unless it's talking about the band, that's the only one I'm familiar with. But it opens up with what is Slayers. Slayers is a TTRPG of monster hunters for hires. Slayers wander a haunted city, cursed long ago to expand towards the horizon forever, with neighborhoods appearing and dissolving overnight. Slayers clean out the monsters that infest the alleyways and shadows, and those that the city seems to be manifesting on its own. The world of Slayers is just on the cusp of an industrial revolution, with new technology clashing with the arcane ways of old. It's slay or be slain. Better get to work. And then it goes into, and I'm gonna go through the next page just because of how short that was. Slayers is a rules-light system for fast action and exciting combat. In order to do this, the classes have been designed with asymmetry front and center. At its core, this game uses a resolution mechanic called the Rule of 4+ for everything. But how each class approaches this mechanic in combat is quite different. What do I mean by asymmetrical? Asymmetry in an RPG, to me, means that each class feels distinct from the others. They approach the game with a different method, and the mechanics should then represent that difference. Look at the quote-unquote most popular RPG in the world right now. A wizard and a fighter both want to kill a monster, one changes reality with their magic, and the other wields a deadly weapon. And what do they do to reflect those actions? They both roll a d20 and add a modifier. That simply won't do. How's it done in Slayers? The blade, page 18, is designed to simulate stylish and fast sword fighting, so they use exploding dice to create huge combos of attacks. The gunslinger has to manage a pool of 6 bullets during combat, deciding how many to spend on a given attack and when to reload. These two different approaches help you feel like your character. The best part? Both are resolved using the Rule of 4+, so combat moves pretty quickly, despite everyone playing their own version of the game. And since I took those pages, I'll let you take the next section.
Right. So for the actual setting, takes place in the city, a cursed urban sprawl that takes the idea very literally. The city spreads on forever with no border. Districts and neighborhood emerge as if the city willed them into existence. As such, the city is a cosmopolitan place filled with the people of all backgrounds and creeds. Unfortunately, the city also has a monster problem. Whether these creatures existed beyond the walls and were absorbed in, were always here, or made manifest by the arcane foundation of the city is unknown. What is clear, though, is the Slayers have their work cut out for them.
So after that, it goes into what you're going to need, which is self-explanatory. You are using the full range of dice. Then the cycle of play. Slayers takes place in cycles called hunts. At the beginning of a hunt, the GM introduces the Slayers to what they're hired to kill and where in the city the hunt will take place. The Slayers do some investigatory work to figure out the details of what's going on and how best to take down their target. Then the hunt begins. After hunting their target, the Slayers reflect, take advancements, and prepare for their next job. Then we have.
I'll say the note from Spencer's worth mentioning just because there is a creator kit if you want to make stuff for the game. They give a link right here in the PDF, which is nice to include.
Especially since, as I've said elsewhere, house rolling is inevitable, but at the very least you can make it easy.
Yeah.
But then we have the rule of 4+. There is one rule that applies to any and all dice rolls. A 4 or higher, 4+, is a hit. This rule applies for any roll in and out of combat. Conversely, any result that's less than 4 is a miss. Slayers takes place within two different modes, combat and narrative. While in narrative, Slayers and the GM resolve most actions in conflict through role-playing. The dice are only picked up once a Slayer is attempting an action where there is a chance for failure, and the consequences of that failure have weight to them. Whenever a Slayer attempts such an action, they roll. And then we have failure with weight. Failure with weight means that something in the fiction will happen if the action fails. When an action fails, move the story forward with the consequence, and provide a new opportunity for Slayers to address. Just saying it doesn't happen isn't very fun or interesting. So fail forward. I'll let you take the next section, which is skills.
If the Slayers aren't attacking something, they're probably making a skill roll. Determine what skill is appropriate for the action, roll the skill's assigned dice. Slayers can assist one another when appropriate, adding a die equal to the helping ally's skill die size. The helping ally will suffer any consequences of the roll, if there are any. Whenever a Slayer rolls more than one dice for a skill roll, use the highest roll. A 4+ is a hit, action succeeds, anything else is a miss. The intended action fails, and the GM introduces the complication or consequence. Skills are also used during combat and are resolved the same way as described above when used during a fight. NPCs never make skill rolls. Instead, their actions and reactions outside of combat are determined by the fiction and the result of the Slayer's rolls. And for a list of skills, we have Agile, dodging, leaping, which includes dodging, leaping, and acrobatics. Brawn, Deceive, Hunt, Mend, which is for warding off death, stabilizing wounds, medical training. Negotiate, Stealth, Streets, Study, Tactics. So all the skills in this cover somewhat of a broader range. For combat, we're going Theater of the Mind. Combat in Slayers uses the Theater of the Mind, meaning many decisions in combat are made based on what makes sense in terms of the fiction, rather than mechanically tracking things like movement speed. You don't need a map, but feel free to use one if you find it helpful for tracking where everyone is during a fight. Relative distance. Distance is determined abstractly. The terms distance and range are used interchangeably in this rulebook. Just we have engaged, which is within melee range. Near, a short sprint away across the room or a street. And far for anything beyond near. If there is ever a question of how far two things are from one another, ask the GM. Start of combat. Before the combat begins, every Slayer has a ready action that they take to get prepared for the fight. Each class has a unique ready action. Once every Slayer has resolved their ready action, we establish the turn order. When combat begins, all combatants determine their place in the turn order. Each Slayer rolls their class's speed die. Monsters have set speed scores. They do not roll. If a Slayer is tied with a monster, Slayer acts first. If two Slayers are tied, they will decide who will go first. Combat in Slayers is made of rounds and turns. A round begins with the character with the highest speed and ends after the character with the slowest speed completes a turn. You keep your speed score between rounds. Sometimes an action by a Slayer or a monster changes that speed score. A turn is when a character acts during the round using combat. That was probably entirely unnecessary to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Combat actions. Players have 2 combat actions, which can take the form of either attack, quick, or skill. You can do any combination in any order, but you can not do an action twice, with some exceptions. You can move once during your turn. So attack is self-explanatory. The quick is quick actions. A lot of classes will have their own set of quick actions, and skills we already covered beforehand. Then we have advantage and disadvantage. Basically, roll all die twice, keeping the higher result, and disadvantage is the same. But then we have damage, healing, and death. Most attack actions deal damage depending on the number of hits. If an effect or ability gives a character a bonus to damage, it increases or decreases the number of damage. You guys know how hit points work. If a monster's HP is reduced to 0, they are dead or defeated. When a Slayer's HP reaches 0, they are downed. A downed Slayer can no longer take actions or move on their turn. They can be revived by an ally using a mend roll. On a mend roll hit, the Slayer returns to the fight with half their HP. On a miss, they remain downed. Any spell or gear that would restore HP can be used to stabilize as well. Downed Slayers that are not revived during combat are revived with 1 HP once the fight is finished. If you take any damage while downed, you die. Let's see, and then we have gear and currency. I appreciate that it's going a bit more abstract and not doing the detailed inventory. In fact, it outright calls that out. You don't keep a detailed inventory of everything you have on them. And then we get to character creation, and I will hand it over to you for that.
So as a quick rundown of the steps, it starts choose your class, determine skill scores, select 2 basic advances to start with, record your starting stats based on your class and advances you've taken, then write down your name, description, basically any of the fluff. Basics of a Slayer's class. While every class is designed to play differently than one another in combat, there is some commonality. All have HP to represent their damage, speed dice. Slayers also all have a ready, attack, and a quick action, though how those actions work mechanically differs between each class. And lastly, all Slayers have a collection of basic and expert advances, allowing them to become even deadlier when out on the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So for advancing your Slayer, after a hunt, your Slayer improves. Before that, however, reflect on the experience and answer at least one of the following questions. What did you learn about yourself? How did you learn about an ally during the hunt? Would you have done things differently? And what about this hunt will stick with you for some time? Once at least one of the questions has been answered, it's time to increase health, a skill score, and choose an advance. To increase your HP, roll a d4 and increase it by the result. Next, increase 1 skill from a d6 to a d8. If all of your skills are already at least d8, you increase 1 skill to d10. And finally, choose an advance. Basic advances may be taken at any time, and expert advances may only be taken after you have 5 basic advances.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the actual classes. Each one's going to have an HP, speed, weapon dice, and damage per hit.
Yep. And
We'll start with the...
Yep. First, I'll take the classes. The first one is the Blade. The Blade is an expert fighter who carves their way across the battlefield with graceful lethality. Moving at a near supernatural speed, blades are able to hit their foes again and again, tearing them to shreds before they even have a chance to react. Blades change their fighting stances on the fly to adapt to the ever-shifting fight. Starting stats: HP is 10, speed is D8, weapon die is D6, Damage per hit is 2. Their ready action is take a stance. Choose one of your stances, flow, parry, or slay, to be in at the start of combat. Their attack action is combo. A blade does not just strike once, but hits their foe with 1,000 cuts before they have a moment to react. Choose a monster at engaged range and roll your weapon dice. Any hits trigger a combo, and you roll another die. This combo continues until you no longer roll any hits. Deal damage for the total number of hits. Let's see, then the other quick action they have is Stance, which there's 3 stances that they can go into. Flow, after you kill a monster, you can take a free move. Parry, monsters need a 5+ to hit you instead of a 4+. And Slay, +1 damage per hit, but monsters do +1 damage per hit. And then after that is its series of basic advances and expert advances. I do like that they're kept pretty straightforward. This is going to be somewhat familiar to people who've played like the playbooks in Powered by the Apocalypse, but just with a bit more crunch to it. Not a whole lot, but a little bit more. Then we have the Gunslinger. While most wield knives or flintlock firearms into battle, the Gunslinger has access to an incredibly rare weapon, the 6-shooter revolver. These weapons are specially crafted, and each Gunslinger has a special connection with their 6-shooter as they carve runes into it to their liking. A Gunslinger can spray lead and bring down the worst the city has to offer. These dangerous weapons mean most avoid interacting with gunslingers, and many slingers leave lives as drifters and slayers. So starting HP is 8, speed is D6, damage per hit is 2. So their ready action is load up. At the start of combat, place 6 D6 in front of you, representing the bullets in your gun. An attack action is spray lead. When you spray lead, choose a near or far monster and pick up as many bullets as you would like to fire. You may use bullets from any chamber that you have loaded. Each bullet that hits deals your damage. Bullets that have been rolled and are spent and are not available until you use a quick action to reload. Speaking of which, quick action is the reload. You can only reload up to 2 bullets in any empty chambers. And after that is a few basic and expert advances. They don't get as many advances as the blade does, but they do get runes. Arcane magic that only the gunslinger understands. It imbues their gun with great power. When you carve a rune into your gun, choose a rune from the following list and write it on a chamber that doesn't yet have a rune. Any bullet fired from the chamber has the additional effect of the rune. A chamber can only hold 1 rune, and once a chamber has a rune, it cannot be undone. So this kind of means that that because of the way runes and the way the spray and pray nature of the gun works, this makes for an interesting combination. In the whole how many d6s you're gonna roll is nice, and then we add this. But after that is the Arcanist. The Arcanist is a spellcaster whose power comes from a source that is slowly destroying them. The Arcanist's mind and body are taxed as the corruption from their power source drains them, though that power can be tapped to boost their spells into terrifying displays. Use their spells too much, though, and the corruption will cause great chaos for everyone. So 6 HP, D6 speed, choose 4 known spells. Their ready action is favored spell. When using a favored spell, don't mark corruption when using it unless it's boosted. Then cast spell. To cast a spell, choose a known spell, mark 1 point of corruption, and roll d6. On a hit, resolve the spell's effect. On a miss, the spell does not work. Spells can be boosted before you roll. To boost a spell, add a d6 to the roll and increase the corruption by 1. Both dice can hit for the purposes of spells that have a per hit effect. After casting a spell, compare the highest rolled die to your current corruption score. If your corruption score is higher than your highest rolled die, roll the Bane table and reset your corruption to 0. You also have the quick action Purge Corruption. Roll a d8. On a hit, you remove 1 point of corruption, and remove none on a miss. And then we have a very short list of spells for the Arcanist. It's only 2 pages.
8 spells in total.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a light and quicker game like this, I think this is fine.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely something you could easily print and go along with your character sheet and just check off the ones that you have.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the approach is... No, never mind, you're only supposed to know 4. And... Let's see, there's a total of 8 spells. So if you could, in theory, learn all 8, but you'd have to learn and hit the books twice each. There's also the fact that you can enhance a spell, because all these spells have extra effect if you choose to boost it or if you choose to enhance it. But next is the Tactician. I'll let you take that one.
So, tacticians read a battlefield like a scholar reads a book. They use their expertise in tactics and leadership to coordinate the efforts of slayers. Without them, slayers are just chaotic killers, or so the tacticians believe. While their fighting days may be behind them, or never really began, the tactician ensures that their allies move strategically while their enemies falter. I love how strangely backhanded this description feels. But 8 HP, D4 speed. And we've got their ready action, ready forces. Gather and roll a number of dice equal to the number of faces on your tactic skill die. A pool size of 6 for D6, etc. This is your strategy pool. Tactical special, execute plan. During combat, you can replace any single result rolled by either an ally or an enemy with any result within your strategy pool during their turn. Once that result has been used, it is discarded for the remainder of combat. Execute plan does not count as an action. Instead, this is done during other characters' turns.
Mm-hmm.
Attack action. Slash or shoot. Roll a d6 to attack and engage your near target. On hit, deal 1 damage. Quick action. Issue orders. Choose another slayer within near range. That slayer may immediately make a skill or quick action for free.
And
this feels like just a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd like playing a tactician in this game.
Yeah. I will always appreciate the martial lead from the front kind of support. But next we have the city, and the city is meant to be more of a concept than a setting. I mean, you're in a city, but as far as the name or how big it is, it's not known, which is why I'm getting vibes of Thief.
That said, this is basically a section that's giving you details and guides on how you can build the different factions and aspects of whatever portion of the city you decide to create.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things we won't go into much detail on here, but very nice to have on hand.
I do like the visual design for each of the city districts.
Yes.
And even more so, each one of the districts has 3 rumors. They may be true, they may not be true, but they are something that can be fodder for a GM to explore. And right after that, we have monsters. Monster is a catch-all term for anyone that the Slayers decide to fight. Usually these are beasts and creatures, but humans can be pretty monstrous too. Then they give an example monster with the creep, and a diagram on how it works. So you've got its HP, its speed, which is set at 3, a bit of fluff, a passive, a action, the amount of actions that it has. So it has 1 action and 1 move. And the reaction. Then it does note that a monster can only use 1 reaction during a round. See, then we have skills. Monsters don't have skills. But if a skill action would be called for, roll a d6. See, and then creating monsters, where it gives a bit of guidance to the stuff I mentioned before.
Like a couple more monster examples. Again, very light system, so one example's probably fine.
Then it goes into the GM section with a lot of advice. And then after that we have 3 sample adventures. And then we have a bestiary proper. So you got what you wished for.
Okay, we do have more. That's quite nice.
And let me see how many pages we have of the bestiary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 pages worth of it.
And guidelines for making monsters.
Yep.
Kind of weird they had the random creep example that far behind the bestiary, but...
And then right after that is a specialized character sheet for each of the classes that are mentioned here.
There are games that definitely need specialized character sheets.
And the thing I appreciate with these is that advances notwithstanding, you could print out these sheets and you'd be more or less good to go.
Yeah.
Especially since each kind of acknowledges the core part of it and what you're going to be using. As well as, in the case of the Arcanist, brings over the Bane chart, so you don't have to check that. It's very clear Spencer has a play from the sheet mindset, much like myself.
It's a very nice, simple, and all of them are very easy to read. I will also note, we have 2 cheat sheets of rule references. Another thing I will always appreciate.
Yeah.
Even for a game this simple, it just means having 2 cheat sheets is... Once you know how to play, you can basically ignore the book and just check the sheets.
I mean, you're probably going to check the sheets just for some of the advances, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But overall, I'd say this is a very good game that knows exactly what it wants to be and is only interested in doing that and nothing else. Which I definitely appreciate.
And it's another one that would be really easy to just pick up and go. Like, you're not going to have to spend much time explaining how this game works to somebody.
And there already is a healthy amount of expansion and fan-made material. Not a huge amount, but definitely nothing to sleep on either.
And considering there's that nice little creation kit that they link to. Yeah. How about we check that out real quick, actually? I'm interested to see how detailed... Like, not, like, go deep into detail on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it a quick look just to see how nice it is. I forgot what page it's on. I know it's in one of the notes.
6. Though, because I have to be consistent, I will note that there is a lack of bookmarks. Although apparently, when I put in the creator kit link in there, it just sends me straight to the itch.io page.
It does, but you can download the creator kit, templates. It has guidelines for classes, monsters, hunts, hacks. So I don't really want to have to download anything, but yeah, there's a decent amount here, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one that if someone I went to play games like, hey, we want to do something else for a few days, like, let's pull this out. And be like, all right, yeah, I'll play some Slayers.
Yeah, more. And truth be told, the whole library of what Gila RPGs has something interesting for just about everyone. I know that at one point he wanted to work on doing his own using his Nova system to cover Warframe, and there was a whole bit of drama involving that. That's been covered elsewhere, but both his Nova system and his Lumen system is in some ways what Slayers would evolve into. But if you look at his itch.io page, and I'm gonna put a link for you. I'm gonna put this in council, and I'll also put this in the comment set in the chat. Hopefully neither of these. Okay, you guys can see it. There's a lot of very interesting games in there. Some of the stuff is more solo, and that I'm not as interested in. But there's still interesting stuff. Like if you want to do a Weird West with this system, you've got Dust and Drifters. Just as a couple examples. His style is very zine-like. None of these are really all that big. I think one of the future projects that he's going to be expanding on is loot, which is him taking the loot aspects of ARPGs like Diablo and doing his own thing with it. But if I were to put Slayers in my usual setup, I would go with strongly recommended.
I'm right there with you on that one.
I mean, it's a pretty straightforward game. It knows exactly what it's doing, and it's not trying to do anything else. I do enjoy the almost Magnolia style art direction that the game is going for. And Slayers, I'd say, is another game we can throw in people's face when they say it's too hard to learn new systems. It's like, can you count past 4? If yes, then you can play Slayers.
What if I can only count to 4?
Well, then you're probably too young for this podcast.
Look, I just have a really stupid meme song in my head now. I can only count to 4 as soon as you said that.
And
Look it up,
actually,
people.
yes,
Great.
there are solo RPGs. I will be covering one solo RPG later this month. It's not something I cover extensively, if only because my style is more about bringing people together with TTRPGs, and solos are a little bit less so. They've always been around in one form or another, but you started to see a whole lot more during the COOF.
I'll be with you. I do not give a single shit about a solo RPG.
The thing is, when it comes to solo RPGs, for starters, a lot of them feel too much like game books. The journaling ones I've never really been interested in because it's really more of a writing exercise than a game. Same with the map making thing. They're experimental exercises, but in terms of game, That being said, if there's any game that presents a strong enough hook, then that is enough to get my attention. The last solo game I covered was Don't Play This Game, which was one giant homage to found footage horror in the way that it was designed. It was very much channeling like early found footage like Blair Witch. And it was done by the Menzies brothers, who have a background when it comes to doing horror RPGs already with Shiver. But, and I see Hydra saying, I do have a question, but it's off topic. There's no question that's off topic for me. And solo games can be simpler, but I do not believe solo TTRPGs can be a proper substitute for proper TTRPGs. It's a different energy, is all. He said, if I wanted to play a TTRPG Diablo, what system should I use? Well, I do know that a Diablo TTRPG is in the works, but in terms of what one to go with, I think it depends on one particular question. Are you trying to shoot for Diablo 1 or Diablo 2? Because Diablo 1 is borderline survival horror in terms of how it presents itself, whereas Diablo 2 is more of a power fantasy. I guess I could say it's akin to the original Alien versus Aliens, which the main reason that was done when it came to those movies was Cameron knew he couldn't do anything like the original Alien, so he didn't even try. So as far as Diablo 1, there are a few potential ones that I could say. There haven't been any fan-made Diablo TTRPGs, at least to my knowledge. There's been stuff that's very much inspired by it. The big one is going to be Shadow of the Demon Lord. I would also say Helgard, Curse of Kaina is another one that is worth looking into. And a third is technically a solo game, but it's a solo that can be played multiplayer, and that is Caer Nethelas into the Midnight Throne by my good friend Alex T.
These I've played Shadows of the Demon Lord. It is fun, and I much prefer the Bane Boon system to advantage and disadvantage for what that's worth.
Mm-hmm. I would also say Witch Hunter: The Invisible World is another one to look into. There's potentially a few others, but those are the ones that are coming at me the most. I know it would be tempting to say, just play and just play any old any old OSR adjacent game, and I'm like, no. Especially again, since that would involve someone having to use that particular magic system, and if I'm being honest, I'm trying to get people away from treating old school versions of the world's most litigious role playing game as the solution for everything. So those are a few that come to mind as potential ones. But the key, obviously, I'm hoping that we get some info on the Diablo TTRPG that's in the works. Right now, because I know one company is doing both that and a board game. They announced it several months ago, and I haven't heard anything since. The last thing I heard from them is them doing a board game adaptation of Don't Starve, which Don't Starve is a fine game, but I have absolutely no interest in that compared to other affairs. But with that said, I know this was a relatively short episode, but that's how these things kind of go sometimes. We will be back here next week, continuing our look at Mysteries of the Yokai, and we're finally getting into the combat section. And if the last few weeks are any indication, do not expect combat to work in the usual way.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.